Tom said he
Did we get, oh, is that
I'm
mine?
not sure.
Is that yours? Oh, this must be mine, right? Thank you.
Well, yesterday was his birthday.
Oh,
You never know.
Okay.
I saw that on LinkedIn, you know.
Good evening, and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting Tuesday, September 25th, 2018. Our agenda for the evening is financial update from Bonnie, our financial director. And item 2 is review of the warrant articles for requests and the Finance Committee recommendations on financial articles. Then we'll have the standard member updates, public input, minutes, and my favorite agenda item is adjournment. So with no further ado, Bonnie, if you could give us a brief update.
Sure. I'm just going to kind of go over the memo that I went over with the Board of Selectmen last evening for the town meeting funding options for the October 29th special town meeting.
Want to just move the mic a little closer?
Sure. Okay. So there have been a few changes since the last meeting a few weeks ago. Basically, we have still the available balance of $175,272 from the snow and ice deficit that was not expended. In addition to that, we have an amount that was formally voted from the Board of Assessors for overlay release. I was estimating $300,000 conservatively. Last year, they released $500,000, but I wasn't really sure where they were at with their appellate tax board cases. They've closed several this year, large commercial ones in the town's favor. So the board did vote to release $760,000 in overlay for this fiscal year, which is available for this town meeting, and if not spent, it will also be available for the next town meeting in May. So that was a boost to the available revenues for this fiscal year. In addition, we have an old article that has been completed and has a balance that has been unexpended. It's for the fuel facility capital account. I have confirmed with Chris Stoddard that it has been completed and everything is running fine. So there's a balance of $133,944 in that account that could also be used for another purpose. So that total altogether equals $1,069,216 that could be appropriated or not for this fall town meeting. At this time, there's 3 articles totaling just over $1,054,000 that is in requests for supplemental capital items for fiscal 2019. The first one is for signal upgrades at the high school, at the traffic signal at the end of the driveway, $201,804. The second one is $42,000 for Master Plan Implementation Committee for zoning consultant services. And the last one is $810,253 for a fire department ladder truck, which is a demo model. That's not the total purchase price of the vehicle. The total purchase price is $1,010,253. However, we appropriated $200,000 at the last town meeting in hopes of getting a grant for that acquisition, which I believe we have not received. We received notice that we did not get the grant. Right. So this $810,000 would bring us to full funding without borrowing inside the levy. And the only other thing that I had discussed very briefly last night, and I know that that's on the agenda for the October 23rd meeting, again, a joint meeting with the Selectmen, the School Committee, and the Finance Committee, is discussion about a school resource officer hiring mid-year. And I presented a funding scenario that would commit both the school and the town 50-50 on funding. We could appropriate that at the special town meeting, and it would allow for a January 1st hiring. However, there was no real discussion had on it last night. It was kind of decided to have that discussion on the 23rd.
Okay. And the school committee is okay with a 50-50 split? this
There was
year?
no, I mean, there was some behind-the-scenes discussions about it, but there was no formal discussion last night about whether there was support.
Is Mike aware that we're going to be discussing it and we'll look for support?
This memo did go to the school committee with this funding scenario proposal well in advance of the selectmen's meeting, so sometime last week.
Last night would have been an appropriate time to talk about with everybody there. Why didn't we? I don't understand.
I think
Okay.
it was,
By the time we came back,
yeah.
Okay.
nobody was in the room. Mr. Chairman, if I could just jump in, I did speak to Mr. Fontanella earlier, and they're not going to discuss it this Thursday. He's out of town. But at the October 11th meeting, it is on their agenda to discuss.
Okay, so.
And the
it'll be on
selectmen are putting it on their October 15th
Okay.
meeting as well. That is, we reached it again late in the selectmen's meeting. There was a lot of staff hearings and
Yeah.
other things last night. But the board did put the matter of funding in FY 2019, the second SRO on the agenda for October 15th. Now, for that discussion, what, we need to have, and as Bonnie would certainly say, we need to have a spending plan that is using.
Right, that's.
That is not using one-time revenues. And so if we're only talking about taking, $21,000 from both sides this year, number one, I don't know, I would look to Bonnie to see where can the town side cut 21,000. That would be my first question. But if we're to commit to any additional staffing level, then
Well,
from
the
recurring
issue-
revenues,
the issue with-
we need to identify what year two looks like. We need to identify.
Yeah,
what
the issue
fiscal
isn't this
2020.
year. Nickels and dimes
Yeah.
can probably be scraped up. But
Yeah.
the issue is you're taking probably $80,000 to $90,000 away from other opportunities for 2020 and beyond. So that
Right.
is, to
And
me,
we
is a
have-
real issue, is that.
And, and there've been plenty of discussions where we've made the school committee and the school department aware that, or just reminded them that thanks to a $250,000 Green Communities grant, which is going to making improvements exclusively on school properties, that is projected by our our consultants' figures, the school department's figures, will save them $71,000 a year in consumption, in their energy costs as of next year, as of fiscal 2020. So the question, that's, we're putting our good foot forward. Here's a way to reduce what your cost would otherwise be. Is there a formula by which we can, dedicate
To
those
share
revenues
something.
towards a shared thing? I would leave to other discussion and Bonnie's advice on where that money should be. I mean, if it's, should you just say, should you do a calculation of here's what the school committee would have got in their budget increase for next year, including the 70,000, and here's what they would accept, reduce it by some number so their budget goes up, or is it split into departments?
Yeah,
And I think that's
I don't know how the accounting works. but-
well, I mean, part of it is a control thing, that there's a reason why we don't have the school employees' retirement and debt service and
Fringe.
insurance costs in the school budget, because we don't have any control over the school budget. We only have control over the non-school budget. So for those items that are specifically required to be paid, debt service on school buildings, group health on school employees, and so forth, those things come out of are technically the non-school side, the town side, but we report them as being school spending. So I just want to caution that there are plenty, there are good reasons to go after cost-sharing formula, but you ought to just want to make sure that when push comes to shove, that you've got a reliable source of where to submit the payroll for the person that gets hired.
Okay.
And we have control over our budget.
Okay, so I guess, so be forewarned that one of the questions on the 25th would be the impact and where is it coming from. So if you talk with Steve Mark between now and then or whatever, that should be also discussed, not only the small amount that it'll be for the last 4 months of the year for this character, but next year. Okay. Good. From the selectmen's side, I would think you would want that discussion as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
So
we
all
had
sing
discussed
happy
that we,
birthday? Sure.
and we had discussed
I
last
told
night
everyone.
that we recognize that the booklet that goes out to the voters, which has the publication deadline of next Tuesday, would have an incomplete recommendation on the Article 2, the budgets, budget article. But if we come to some agreement on, at our joint meeting on the 23rd of October, then we could just put that change in the update
Right.
that we hand out at the insert. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I didn't count the number of signatures on the petition, but it looked like, what, a
About
couple
250 or
hundred?
300,
Yeah.
yeah. When I last checked.
Petition was for the 2020 budget.
Oh, 2020, okay.
Yeah.
Well, at our last meeting, Cindy was here, and she was the one that spoke up requesting that it be considered for this year, as I recall.
Yeah.
Those of you that were here. So, okay.
Because I can speak to a number of constituents that have expressed that they signed the petition for 2020, but if it happened sooner, they'd be thrilled. So those same folks.
Yeah, you guys have to support it, the school department has to support it before we opine on the funds, right? Okay. Okay. Moving right along. Okay, shall we go through the warrant articles and see which ones we're willing to vote on tonight and then go forward?
So I've put the latest and greatest draft of the warrant up on the screen, and you have the draft that was circulated today. Article 1 is vote for bill of prior years. It's a 9/10 requirement. Fortunately, we have no bills of prior year at this time, but we leave it
Right.
out there
Right.
should something materialize. We're not expecting anything, and typically if we do, it's in the, a few $100 range. It's not,
Okay.
they're not typically big items. Article 2 are fiscal 2019 budget amendments. There are 2 main items on here. The first one is for police dispatch personal services. This is for the hiring of the 2 additional dispatchers to facilitate the EMD requirement for ALS, so advanced life support, emergency medical dispatch requirement.
So we didn't know that we would need this at budget time?
No, we didn't.
Why?
It was,
Why is that?
because no one told us. And it came up when the dispatchers told us. during
We should have known
bargaining.
this, we were talking about putting ALS in.
Right,
Yeah.
right, that's the,
But we were able to cover it, and it was, I'm glad the dispatchers raised it. It was, during bargaining, it was an important issue, and I'm glad that we could come up with a funding mechanism to address it, which is to have it come from the ambulance receipts.
okay, so this will be, these 2 heads will be funded by receipts, assuming the business plan
Correct.
comes through.
There are enough funds in the ambulance receipts to fund this right now. And we're just starting now to get the revenue stream from the ALS costs.
Okay.
So in the next quarter, we'll have a good idea of what the ALS component is bringing in as a delta above the BLS.
Okay, when you say next quarter, the quarter
Ending
closes,
December.
so end of December,
Yeah.
you think both selectmen and finance committee should review how we're doing against the plan
Correct.
and see how that's going?
Did an update.
Okay, so these guys were hired last night, right?
Yeah.
One was
One of them
appointed.
was hired. The Board of
But we
Selectmen.
haven't voted on the budget yet to make sure
Well,
there's
the
money?
Board of
How's that
Selectmen
work?
voted in June to authorize the hiring of 2 positions.
They didn't post for the positions until we authorized them.
Right. But until town meeting approves this, there's not really money The money's not there?
They are using their 911 grant, which normally would be used to facilitate overtime, to cover the gap. But without this funding, then it wouldn't be covered for the
Without
full
funding,
fiscal year.
the police department would run out of some amount of money by the end of the year, and we do a year-end transfer or something. But what we could not do, since we implemented emergency, the ALS in the fire department in July,
Without-
we could not have the corresponding dispatch coverage increase, because essentially what it meant was, right now, under the old BLS system, we could do call forwarding, basically, at the dispatch. And when we're ALS, you can't. So you get the call, you stay on the call, and that was an increase in dispatch services that unless we were going to not implement ALS, we had to come up.
So this was just a miss during the budget cycle?
Yeah, my understanding is there
Police
was a
or
request
fire.
for one additional dispatcher in the budget cycle, but there wasn't the connection made that it's required. Like, we were required to add additional dispatchers as a component of the ALS implementation.
Okay.
So we're happy that we're able to figure,
Yeah,
to come
no,
up with
I'm
a solution
not-
to go forward.
If we need it for the service, we've stepped in for the service, so, let's not have a busy signal or
Yep.
an answering machine when somebody calls.
How do you feel about that?
I'm all for it.
All timing.
Okay, thank you for.
Again, so that's supported through the ambulance receipts. The balance in the ambulance receipts as of June 30th was $714,000 and change. We voted $500,000 to come out to support ALS for this fiscal year, so this adds this additional $85,000 towards that. So it is available, and we'll know the new revenue projections better in December 31st.
Okay, so you have one quarter's receipts as of the end of September, whatever they are,
Yeah, they'll be
plus.
delayed, because we collect in August, in July and August from May and June, and those are BLS rates. So really, the
No,
second
But
quarter.
you have some funds coming in on a
Oh, we do,
monthly
yes,
basis.
absolutely.
So the 200,000 that was in there will slowly.
Is higher, yes.
Be replenished,
Yes,
okay.
is higher.
All right, okay.
The second one is for veteran services for the VFW expense. This is an amount of $10,000 coming from overlay surplus to support expenses associated with the VFW post in Littleton on Taylor Street for their operations.
Now, when we talked about this before, there were sort of limitations on what this money could or could not be spent for,
Correct.
and that's all clarified and.
Well, it can only be spent for a lease.
Helpful.
It can only be spent to support a lease, so what we're doing is trying to negotiate the appropriate lease, which may be to have the VFW provide space for the American Legion, for example, and to have the town pay for the cost of the lease. We're trying to work within
Okay,
the
so
strict
we're trying to
guidelines
work
of the
within the
statute
system, but we
In
in
think.
order to give additional funds to the VFW. So, but we have to play by,
It's
In the
not
tip-
to stock the
we have to
bar,
play by the rules.
Yeah.
maybe.
That article comes later.
So it's a total of 10,000 for the year. We didn't have anything in the budget,
No, not this.
No.
because I know we had discussed it at budget time. I couldn't remember if we had put anything in, actually put anything in for it. Okay. And do you see this being about the number going forward, Chuck, or is it double that because we're doing it halfway through the year, or?
I anticipate that a $10,000 boost on an annual basis,
Okay.
in all likelihood, will sustain. There's a lot of effort that's gone into revitalization, member drives and things like that, and different events that have been held to try to fundraise. So I think that that's gaining some traction, so I think that this will be sustainable.
Okay, so we would see in next year's budget, we'd see a line item under John Borowski's budget
Veterans
for
Specifically for
10,000
the-
for
yes.
that VFW, assuming you can figure a way to do the lease.
Correct.
Is that
Also,
reasonable?
part and parcel of this conversation, talked about the VFW also represents towns other than Littleton.
Correct.
And there was some thought as to doing an outreach to see if some of the other communities were interested in helping out.
I believe Mr. Wilson was reaching out to the other communities.
Okay. Yeah, we had talked about.
To answer your question, yes, that is happening.
Okay. Okay. Sorry for the questions, go ahead.
No, it's good. So those are the totals for Article 2 at this point. If there were further consideration for the SRO, the school resource officer hiring, it would be incorporated in this article, but at this point, this is where it stands, and this is where the booklet will be printed. So if there's an adjustment made, we'll do a handout sheet for that night with amendments.
Okay. So we'll have on the, was it 23rd?
I think it's the 23rd is the Tuesday,
23rd,
yes.
25th, whatever it is.
Yep, October 23rd.
Tuesday, October 23rd. Okay.
For VFW expense.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions on Article 2?
Yeah.
Shall we, as we discuss, shall we vote them as we go through?
Yeah.
I think so.
Thanks. Can I have a motion to recommend Article 2 as presented in the document?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay. Recommendation by Fincom.
Thank you. Article 3 is to fund the collective bargaining agreement for the Littleton Professional Firefighters Association, which was the last bargaining agreement that we were looking to reach agreement on. This will cover us from July 1st of 2018 to June 30th, 2021. And it's a 2% increase in years 1, 2, and 3. It is similar to the dispatch and fire and other collective, dispatch, fire, no, dispatch, police, like too many unions. Police, dispatch, and highway unions for the same period of time. So the impact of this is $18,250 for the first fiscal year of the contract, which we need to vote in accordance with Mass General Law.
There were some costs that get built into a collective bargaining agreement, which typically we put in the budget, and we carve out those things that are peculiar to, increase of. So I think this one's calculated basically 2% on top of the, we implemented a salary study for union and non-union. We put that money in the operating budget that was passed at town meeting. What we did not do is to put the cost of living adjustments for the contract. So those are basically the amounts that we had the annual town meeting approved for police, dispatch, and highway, and now we're going back and having the same thing done for fire.
For fire, okay. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Would you recommend Article 3?
Second.
Second to recommend Article 3 as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Let's recommend. Article 4.
I hope you might want to take a position on this. It's a financial article and then it produces revenue. So put a placeholder there, the Finance Committee recommendation with comment. It proposes to adopt the 3% sales tax on marijuana. Since the town has determined that we're in that business, and town meeting has passed a zoning bylaw that allows so-called adult use marijuana, and that our bylaw matches the statutory requirement that if you're in the adult use marijuana business, you have to have, unless you have a plebiscite, a referendum that prohibits it or limits it, you must have X number of retail establishments, and that's determined for Littleton to be 2, which is the number of package store licenses, 20% thereof rounded up to the nearest whole number. So neither of those licenses have been issued yet. We haven't actually had an application come before us. We've got quite formally, we've got a lot of expressions of interest about those 2 retail licenses. But once they are in place, we would like to be able to take advantage of the 3% sales tax that's allowed. Just by way of discussion on what revenues does the town get from marijuana, we have an existing host community. I guess I'd have to say the jury's out on that, because many communities, including ours, has entered into host community agreements for marijuana, which the so-called Cannabis Control Commission of the state is looking at whether those communities can actually reap all the benefits that are provided in their agreement, especially if the agreement itself produces dollar figures that are higher than what the state statute would seem to allow. There was no state statute in place when we negotiated our agreement, and so, for example, with the cultivation site, sanctuary medicinals, by year 4, we are to get $100,000 from sanctuary. However, the language in the law that was subsequently passed says that any amount that, yes, you can collect up to 3% of the gross sales from the company, but it can't be more than what is the value of the services that you actually provide to that establishment. So are you doing $100,000 worth of, police details or other, public safety functions, and we would be hard pressed to identify $100,000 worth of services that are provided. So all the more reason why we would want to take advantage of the standard of 3%
I think the
sales tax.
selectmen should put a tariff on marijuana.
Absolutely.
Get some serious money going.
Is there a fee for the license?
Is there a fee? I'm sure, a good question.
It goes to the state.
Yeah, it's a state, they get they get a license from the state, and they get a special permit from the planning board. So there is an application fee for that, but it's not, it's not, in our case, the fees that we set are, in order not to be taxes, are associated with what it costs us to process the application.
We did negotiate an HCA with the cultivation site. It was their pay-to-play, and that's Mass General law allowed us to do that, so we did negotiate that in good faith. And the uprights are moving a little bit here, so we're just kind of trying to protect ourselves to make sure that we can maximize it. They're going to allow us to tax at 3%, it's like a hotel, room tax in the hotel or meal tax in the restaurants. So we're going to try to maximize that.
And that 3%'s the highest we can go?
Yeah, that's the statutory maximum.
So
If
3%
we
on
were
the retail
Littleton,
sales.
Colorado, we could do 30%.
3% of the retail sales, and then the additional 3% is the, for services rendered.
Right.
So the first 3% is,
Right.
you get that no matter what.
But interestingly, the cultivation sites, since they're not retail and there's no sales, don't pay the tax. So the money that we would only get will come ultimately, under this anyway, will ultimately come from the retail establishments once those are issued. And we will be able to collect some amount from the host community agreement. What that is, I don't know, but we'll have to be very careful in doing what's called the Emerson College calculation, where the test is a fee is an unlawful tax if you can't justify what services you provided to.
We
justify it.
just repaved their road for $700,000, whatever the hell we paved their road. But with regard to the 3% sales tax, it's an incremental revenue that we don't have today.
Correct.
And we had a meeting of the financial policies group last night, and one of the things we were talking about was we probably missed a bet when the point came on, because we have room tax, we have meal tax, and if we had earmarked some of those incremental taxes for open space, for putting away for a new fire truck, for.
Or a senior
Or
center.
a cell tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, a senior center, or a bathhouse, a beach house. We could, it's incremental money, it wouldn't necessarily flow into the operating budget, but it's money that could slowly build over time. Whether you earmark it for something that goes into CPA and get the match, I don't know. But this is an opportunity where we're not going to be collecting this for a while, I assume, to talk about it. And use this as an example of if there are incremental revenues coming into town with all the new growth that is supposed to come with the revitalization of the common area. You know, is there a way to take some of that off the top and put it towards some of the very large projects that seem to be coming down the pike at us?
I'm not sure, have we discussed that? I know that there've been some conversations about.
Yeah, it came up at the 5:30 meeting yesterday, but I don't know if that trickled into the 6:30 meeting.
I just, over the past
Yeah.
several months, when we were
Yeah.
talking about cannabis control, it was the town council.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about earmarking it, and we certainly had, that certainly should have a discussion like that, and it's, I have to say, the revenues up till now, all the ones that have been mentioned have been viewed as general revenues that are subject
No,
to the split between the town and the schools. So if you've got something else in mind for it, then.
Well, again, I mean, the schools have capital projects,
Sure.
the town has capital projects. Maybe there's a way to, agree on a list that, you fund this one first and that one next, or you split it up. And we're gonna have to sell one heck of a lot of marijuana to have this be a meaningful amount of money, but,
We don't.
the money come off the point.
And I wish I could say what even the estimate is of what we would get under this, but since no one's collecting it.
Right.
Yeah, we don't
So-
know, but it could be significant.
So it's just, I don't think it's anything for us to do tonight on it, but I just wanted to make people aware that the policy committee, brought it up and we were sort of kicking it around.
Yeah, 3%.
If we have new sources, rather than just let them run into the general fund, should we look at least some of them go to longer term projects or something? So,
I think it's worthy of at least investigating further.
Okay.
For every $1 million, we're talking $90,000, so it's not,
Yeah,
it's similar to what we've done with cell phone revenues and cell tower revenues. I think it's worth having that conversation.
Yeah, and to Littleton's credit, the fact that, decades ago, the decision was made to go into the cell tower business and put that money aside for
yeah.
open space. There's a lot of communities out there that don't do cell towers because it was seen as injurious to open
Right.
space.
Well,
Here it helps.
Yeah, God bless Savas.
Yeah.
I mean, our Everbrady Bunny, I mean, he was behind the initial one there, so that's good. All righty, So you're looking for a recommendation from the finance committee whether we think this is a reasonable thing, not that whether selling pot's reasonable or not, but whether we think we would like to collect 3%. Is that?
I'll make a recommendation, we support Article 4.
Second. Have a recommendation, a motion and a second to support Article 4 as written. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Yeah. I'll support on that.
VFW ought to get one of those licenses.
Self-sustaining.
Community garden.
Out of the box, I love
Okay, so Article 5 is a road acceptance article for,
It's tangentially financial because we have a mercenary reason for laying out this portion of Foster Street as a public way so that we can secure $3.6 million in state
State
funding.
funding, yeah.
That we can only apply to a public way, and we have to prove that it's been laid out by town meeting, and as with many of our major roads in town.
Either that or we could make it a private way, put a toll booth on it so they couldn't get to the train station without paying $1. Yeah, both ways, and, you know, make $400 a day.
But if it's a private way, the town will plow it.
Except for people who live on Foster Street, they get a pass, right?
Right, we
Maybe.
and we, you know, we continue to have responsibility to take care of Foster Street, and we've always been able to prove to ourselves that it's a public way. Now we just have to prove to the state that it is so we can spend their money.
And this includes the flyover at
No, it doesn't include the
Doesn't include the
flyover or
no,
flyover.
there's no circle.
or the, you know, the tunnel or the roundabout. So-
It's all wanted a circle, though, so.
But we had done something similar just a few years ago with New State Road and Nagog Hill Road when we were looking to spend Chapter 90 money on those reconstructions. And we didn't have a record of those town meetings either, so.
Yeah, they're pre-1846
Yeah,
roads, I
yeah.
believe, so there's no vote. They're cow paths that developed into roads.
So this just goes from Taylor to Harwood, and
Yes.
do you envision doing the
That's not-
same?
Yeah, and someday
Activity.
we'll bring, as the need arises, we'll, you know, lay out the remainder, yeah, from Harwood to Foster Street. But in the meantime, or to King Street rather, in the meantime, though, we may have other projects that we need to engineer and do survey plans for ahead of that. I think, because there are miles and miles and miles of roads that would need to get this treatment, and it costs a few bucks.
That big development goes in down there, you're gonna need sidewalks all the way along there.
The next article is Article 6, which is to transfer ownership of some Durkey Farm parcels to the town of
I thought
Littleton.
Keith wanted us to vote on that one. You don't,
No, you don't.
you were just saying
I
your
just-
information.
You don't.
Just
Okay.
your information.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Got
really
it.
need a vote on that. Don't really need a vote on Article 6, transfer of the Durkey Farm parcels, but just be aware that that's a continuing, it says here that motion to be made at town meeting. It's a subject of a continuing, an ongoing discussion between the selectmen and the planning board and the conservation commission about the timing of this. We think we may want to wait until a later point, have the town take it over once the requirements of the conservation commission have been met first by the developer, rather than have those requirements be passed on to the town to do at our expense. So we're going to have some further discussions at our next meeting and may end up pulling this article.
It's not directly related to this, but there was some discussion about incremental parking down at the train station and potentially putting some
Yeah,
on
that
side
would
of the
be, yeah, it
street.
wouldn't
Is
be
that-
in either this area A or B, but it would be in
the
in
lower.
another section. Yeah, lower
So
left.
below A
Oh,
there.
it's this one?
Yeah, lower left, right there.
Okay.
At
Lower left.
a future time, so maybe we'll just plan to bring all of them forward at a later date. But one of the things that we're looking to do on the Foster Street Improvement Project, that the state's going to pay for, we would like to get the scope of that project expanded to include the alignment of the Grimes Lane intersection with Foster Street. It would create a safer intersection. It would create, it would mean that if Grimes Lane could come out where the entrance is to the commuter rail station, farther away from the railroad tracks where that
And where a
vehicle
truck can make the
didn't quite
swing
make
in.
it across this summer, so.
Yeah, okay. Just an off-the-wall question. Article 7?
Article 7 is a transfer of town property from the Board of Selectmen to the Water Commissioners. This is the old highway barn, and the property that surrounds it is Water Department property. So this would transfer the ownership of that centerpiece over to the Water Department so that they can do some upgrades to their systems there. They'd also take ownership of decommissioning that building for the town. And I believe that they would also agree to indefinitely store the equipment, the plows or the mowing equipment that's currently stored in that barn.
I think there's some discussion around the term indefinitely.
Yeah.
Having listened to, getting a phone call today after last night's discussion. So,
Yeah, and I think that what we heard Chris Stoddard from DPW say is that he's going to put in the capital plan request that he's preparing now, he's going to put in requests
shed of
for,
some kind.
for some kind of permanent solution at the highway garage for.
2 additional days.
Yeah.
To, rather than have this satellite facility here, which is in not good shape. And,
Well, I have no issue getting rid of this. I
Yeah.
think this is an elegant solution to a nagging problem. And I'm all for it, to be honest with you. And I think if we heard last night that the water department was willing to, again, help out the VFW with overflow parking, or sort of up behind the building there, I think it's a
It's a
win-win
win-win,
here.
yeah.
So
A little horse trading.
I don't have a problem with it. I think
Right.
that's good.
Again, that's not a financial article, so typically,
Well, it's
But just so you know, it will be at a
from
financial
the-
request.
From our
because
standpoint,
highway will
but
be-
from the ratepayer standpoint,
It's a cost avoidance, frankly.
I'm sorry?
It's a cost avoidance. I mean,
Oh,
Steve,
from-
you've done some numbers
from
on
our
the cost to raise
standpoint.
that building.
Right, from our standpoint, it's a cost of living.
Yep.
But it's still gonna cost to take it down, the water department will pay for it, so.
Right.
Okay, so there's no request for support from us on that, but I think it's a worthwhile thing. Any other questions?
I mean, you're in it for $7 million already yourself, so, because you supported the water project, so this is just an ancillary. Because because the water department is indicating that it needs to have control of that property, 74 Whitcomb, by the time it puts the $7 million project out to bid next spring.
Right.
So this would facilitate that.
Right, no problem,
so Article 8 are the supplemental capital items requested from available funds. So again, there's no borrowing, there's no two-thirds requirement, this would be a majority vote. There are 3 items being requested. The first, item A, is for traffic signalization at the Littleton High School and King Street intersections. That's for $201,804. That's the town's cost to implement that traffic signal there, and it would be a timed signal based on demand. So it wouldn't be running, 24/7, it would only be when traffic pulls down or tries to bear left into the high school parking lot.
It's been a top priority for the school department and for the selectmen, public safety, for at least the last 4 years. But then we've been trying to get the MassDOT to approve a phased traffic signal at that intersection. And I often explain about MassDOT and traffic signals that if it's a numbered state highway, that MassDOT performs sort of there's a dual role. Number one is they are the regulator who that either lets you put in a signal or not. And if you don't get their permission, you can't put the signal in at all. So that's one thing. The other thing is that sometimes, for some projects, MassDOT is also the facilitator. They are the implementer. Witness the Air Road, Bruce Street, Willow Road intersection, where we were able to put together a convincing argument, our selectmen together with the Air selectmen and our legislators, to convince MassDOT that, gee, a traffic signal is needed there right away, and MassDOT's going to pay for it. So for that one, MassDOT immediately put in, or by that summer, put in a temporary set of traffic signals. It's there now for $300,000, and is committed to a $3 million project for the Air Willow Bruce intersection, which would get funded on what's called the
That's
TIP.
where Paul's circle will go.
So,
Perhaps.
so on that intersection, that's good news that the state will pay for 100% of the cost. On this one, the state was supportive as a regulator, that the MassDOT District 3 office in Worcester agreed to recommend to the Boston office that this traffic signal be approved. However, they did not feel that it had the same sort of urgency that the Air Willow Bruce did, where there's some fatalities and other more serious indicators of why the traffic signals were needed. So they said that they would take it as a sign of the town's interest in the traffic signals if the town committed to pay for it. So the state would do 25% design of this traffic signal at its expense. That's what they're doing now, MassDOT District 3. But that the 100% design and the implementation, the construction would need to be paid for by the town. Now, I said before that the temporary fix for Air Willow Bruce was $300,000, permanent fix $3 million. The permanent fix for this intersection is $200,000. So that they're not envisioning that any major realignments of the intersection would be needed, just putting the traffic signals up.
And the selectmen voted to support this.
Selectmen voted to support it, the school committee has voted to support it. There were some issues that came up, which we tried to address. There was a concern from some of the neighbors about would this create a backup situation where there's a long
For
queue
New Estate.
that would impact New Estate Road. That would not be the case any more than it is now, from where it's the use of the high school that, if there aren't cars at the high school, coming out from the high school, you're not going to see the traffic signal change. So, and there were also some concerns of would there be a ripple effect down to the I-90, 495 intersection at exit 30.
Let's stop and go every
So-
rush hour anyway.
Yeah, and for that, the state committed to, they said, hey, well, we haven't studied that in a while, but if the town wants us to study it, we'll put it on our list of things to do for the fall. So we're going to follow up and get them to look at that.
So this 25% design, is that like a schematic design, and then they turn it over to the town?
Yeah,
And the town takes it from that
Yeah,
point?
yes, it's the level that they need to issue the permit. The 25% design is internally what MassDOT needs in order to act on a permit request, and then the responsible party would be expected to bring it to 100% design, get final approval from MassDOT, and then
So how
construct it.
comfortable are we with the 201,000?
Chris Stoddard committed.
It's pretty solid.
It's 201,804 all in.
With contingency.
I'm
He
sorry.
thinks it
With the
could,
contingency.
yeah, he thinks it could be lower. His estimate was, could be as low as 150, but that the 200,000 figure that MassDOT has provided, which had plenty of, plenty of buffer in there, would be sufficient to do it.
And Chris also confirmed that the signal would be activated not just when they're queued to exit the driveway, but when they're queued to enter in, taking a left.
Yeah,
So
in
it's in
and
both
out,
directions.
Coming from there.
Yeah.
So the 201,000, was that an estimate by MassDOT or by
Yes.
Crest?
No, MassDOT produced that.
Okay, because they have a very substantial database based on their individual districts and the cost for just about anything you can think of.
They did a detailed estimate, which
Okay.
is in the agenda packet for boards.
Okay.
It's good reading.
Yeah.
Any other questions on, let's see, Article 8A? Traffic signalization of Littleton High School, King Street. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Do these individually? Okay, I move. To
Second.
support.
I have a motion and a second to recommend traffic signalization at Littleton High School, King Street intersection, which is Article 8A. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, recommended.
Article 8B is for the Master Plan Implementation Committee, $42,000 to be expended for costs associated with implementation of the master plan, including zoning consultant services for form-based zoning amendments. Michael Zeldin came in at your, I think it's your last meeting,
Yep.
to provide a presentation on that. So this is the formal article requesting it.
Yeah, Mike did a good job on his presentation.
Yeah.
His 10-minute presentation.
You got you with that too?
That's such a good job on that part of it. It was good information.
I tried, I couldn't get in. Okay, any questions or comments on this one? I think we did have the presentation, the selectmen voted it last night.
Voted to support it.
Make a motion that we support.
Yes, no, what?
No, I'm not convinced, it's just me,
Okay,
but I'm not convinced it's a good idea. I have nothing against form-based code. I just think this, we need, despite what they say about whether the sewer goes in or not, that this is a good idea. Before we spend another $42,000 on this, let's see if the sewer thing works. If the sewer goes through, then fine, we need to do something like this. If it doesn't, I don't see a point to it because the ship has sailed up there.
Yeah, but you've got a greenhouse sitting there waiting for somebody to do something with that whole side of the road. It's owned by one owner, and you can let them do it as they have, or give them some ideas that this is how the town expects it to look, to do something, right? I mean,
Well, but that may be true, but do you have to do that today, tomorrow, the next day? And besides which, if I read this correctly, is to investigate using, and as he said last night, when someone asked him if it's $42,000 were going to be used for code-based, he said yes, and then he equivocated and said, well, you know, once it goes into the fund, then it's available for use of anything that the implementation
but he
committee
said the
wants.
deliverable, when I asked him last week, he said the deliverable for this was the zoning, the wording that we could use.
Right.
That's what he's,
Yeah, no, I heard you, but I heard it last night too, so.
I didn't know.
But in any event,
Well, I know what the article says.
everybody's entitled to their opinion, that's mine.
Okay, that's,
Yeah, this could only be used for zoning consultant services for the purpose stated in the article. That's how it will be allowed to be expended.
The warrant has to be signed.
Right.
Still, don't think it's necessary.
well, yeah.
I just want
That's fair.
to
But
confirm
but
that.
that's not Mike's interpretation, because he did say that last night. And I have no doubt that our bulldog over here won't allow misuse of the funds.
I go to this.
Right, so that's the only, I think, the saving grace on that is that we do have control.
Gatekeeper.
Okay, any other questions or comments or concerns?
So I make a motion that we recommend item B, Article 8 in the warrant as written.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending Article 8B, the master plan implementation for $42,000. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, it's 4 to 1. Marilyn, 4 to 1, okay. Good. Okay, the next one is the fire department ladder 2 replacement for basically $1 million. It's an incremental $800,000 that we're looking to appropriate, I guess.
Correct, yes.
And the 200 has already been appropriated.
Yes, the 200,000 was appropriated last year for use towards the matching grant that we had applied for, which we have not received. So this would be the delta of $810,000 to acquire a demo model ladder truck that meets the major requirements that the town would have put out in an RFQ or RFP for a ladder truck. The benefits are, the savings are about $200,000 plus from the vehicle that we would have spec'd out, custom built, plus an 18-month window on construction build delivery to the town. It's a 30-year-old ladder truck. It has been in the capital plan for, well, since I've been here, so at least 10 years, at least in place. We have pushed it out, I think, the last 4 years. It's been requested in the year, that we've been in the last 4 years. However, we have pushed it out because of the design and the construction of the fire station. We couldn't have housed this vehicle under the old station, so we really needed to wait for construction to be completed. This is kind of off-cycle in that we typically do these purchases in May. However, this opportunity came up when they were looking at what was available out in the market that met their major requirements.
Before I open discussion on this, did everybody get, Gary couldn't be here tonight, he's down in Washington. He sent an email just with his thoughts, everybody got those, just so you saw them, okay?
2 of them, because at first he said he had one position, he changed his position.
Right.
Just so everybody has all the information. Okay, good. Chief, you want to?
We've had opportunities to go for grant money for this. We've gone for the AFG for the last 4 years in a row. We're 0-4. Each year it comes back. We actually make it through the entire grant process, makes it past peer review. We get to the final stage, and the final stage is typically they run out of money, and their reply is that we need to show more of a financial need. So that's harmed us. This last round, we actually increased the match from 5% to 20% with the hopes that it would increase our odds at getting this. And that was the feedback that we were able to get from the committees that review these, giving us that opportunity just to increase it. And we received the notification last week that we did not receive it.
So this is based on a financial need and not necessarily the condition of the vehicle?
That's correct. One thing you have to keep in mind is you're competing with every town in the entire country. We're not just dealing with towns in the state. So as these funds go across the whole country, the larger cities get more of a priority, and things of that nature where funds are difficult to come by.
If I could just, one of the very interesting things that came up this week on this is there are communities that are, wealthier than Littleton, like Concord, and communities around us that do very well, and similar in bond ratings. And we get right through to the final end with those communities, and then we're turned down. One of the things that we've been turned down on is when they determine financial need, they look at, have you done overrides or capital exclusions or debt exclusions? And Concord will. Now they'll do that, and then they'll go fund it inside, after the fact, like we do. So we've taken some of our debt exclusions and then pulled them inside and funded them. But they're voting them outside, up front, and then funding them. So when it comes to an apples-to-apples comparison, we don't do any capital. We haven't done any capital exclusions or anything like that since 2009. So that just is something that I learned this week. So I thought that was important to relay to you, and, you know, it might be
But
something
we've
that we
been
want to.
doing that because it's our view of how to keep our AAA bond rating. So,
Right.
and putting money aside.
So, yeah,
So,
okay.
But if it
Well,
has
is that something?
interesting to know, data point to
Yeah.
know that might.
So it's a
might be
strategy.
Grant program.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so what they do is they take their money and they put it into capital exclusion or debt exclusion stabilization funds. They'll do a debt exclusion or a capital exclusion, then pay it, cash. But what they're looking at for these grants are, do you do those types of funding mechanisms, and we haven't.
I'm not sure that that's relative though, because there are communities that don't do that kind of funding that didn't get awarded.
But they might have different, you know, economic data points that we do. But I'm looking at it Concord.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how come they're getting money and we're not?
I can see why
Foxborough.
Maynard would, because theirs would, you know, their.
Do they do
Their
capital exclusions or
demographics
debt?
are
I mean,
less.
I haven't looked at them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just interesting,
But-
you
but-
know.
No, it's good.
The grantsmanship sometimes is gamesmanship.
Yes.
Well, are you suggesting that this is something that financial policy committee should look at?
I think it's something that
And make
it,
a recommendation to selectmen and FinCom on, or?
I think it's something that we need to look into, because I'm sure that the financial need components are different for different agencies. When you're looking for, you know, a FEMA grant or a, you know, EHS grant, we need to look at what demonstrates financial need. What are they looking at in other communities that have been awarded? I found it very interesting to find that, you know, Concord had been awarded when we weren't.
So how did
And-
you find that out? Is there a score,
And talking-
is there like a score sheet? I mean, did they give points?
They-
Correct. It is point-based, and depending on how you meet, you know, you meet certain data points, you have to provide your last 3 years of financials for the community. You provide your need, the age of your equipment, the type of department you have. Everything is put in and comes into these scores. And we make it to the very end, every time. And if there was additional funding, we may get it, but they run out of the funding, and then you typically get the letter that, you know, other communities were able to show financial need greater than us.
So do you do your own grant applications, or do you have somebody that does it for you?
This past year, just before this past year, when we went for the air packs, I had the grant writer that did Concord's do ours for us. They did it for us, and they're very successful. And again, we received the same letter that we need to show financial need.
I have the letter that we got back.
Okay.
So the response was, and it answers the question that Steve asked about the score as well. In order to help to obtain a higher score in a future
Excuse
AFG.
me, just speak up a little bit.
Sure. In order to help to obtain a higher score in a future AFG grant request, it is recommended that you review the portion of your application in which you addressed your department's need for financial assistance and the inability to address the need without financial assistance. There are several tools and resources available to help fire departments and volunteer interest organizations develop effective AFG grants. I encourage you to make use of these resources as you prepare your next grant request. So it speaks to the score, Steve, that you were asking about, and the fact that we didn't demonstrate that we couldn't afford it without the federal funds.
Because we can. I mean, the bottom line is we can. I mean, I get it, we're in the game and all that stuff, but I mean.
So can Foxborough, so can Maynard, they all.
Okay, I get it.
Maynard got their ladder truck last year, and we.
Yeah, Maynard's,
we had-
I
The
can imagine, it's a
demographics
whole
for
other,
Maynard
it's a
are
whole
totally
different,
different than
whole different discussion than here, but.
Did we use Maynard's?
As a matter of fact, we did. He gave me his
I
grant.
know that Gary had requested that.
Yep. I have his grant.
Well, so what
But-
we're hearing is that sort of like the way we've been using CPA. And utilizing the system, shall I say.
Yeah, the blended CPA is a
Yeah, the
good
blended
example of this
is
game.
right, is our version of this. And if there's something we should be doing as a town to enhance our ability to be recognized for incremental funds, we should at least look at it, I guess. But it's, everybody needs to be
It's very
involved, but
interesting,
this
it's
is how you
very
run
interesting to
business.
hear that if there's some kind of paper transaction that we can do to make ourselves more competitive for a grant, we ought to understand what that
Understand
looks
what
like.
it is,
And what
right,
does that
yeah.
mean, and then say, okay, fine, that's going a little too far, we're not gonna do that, this is something else. Or that's enough, interesting enough that we would wanna, pursue that area.
So Chief, what was the grant dollar amount?
So we put in for the max, which is basically $1 million. So by going the 20% instead of the typical 5, that was, they said that is typically looked at very favorably to increase our odds, to show that the community is serious.
Skin in the game.
Yeah, and,
So it would have been an $800,000?
correct.
Okay.
We explored another grant here, just so you know, that we had a short list of projects to consider for the Housing Choice Capital Grant Program. And in fact, it was when we saw that, and my first thought was, gee, can we get money for the ladder truck? And then we read the fine print that says, well, it has to be, if you will, shovel-ready, if you pardon that expression, by June, for deliverable by June 30. You have to committed your money by next June 30, which at that point, the chief took the challenge as, okay, what do we
Let's
got?
go
What
for
is
it.
there out there that we could actually get by June 30? Because typically, we think about 18 months after we do the purchase, and that's where the idea of the demo vehicle entered the picture. That, oh, look, here's a demo which you can get for a discounted total price without, so in essence, $200,000 less and 18 months sooner than we would normally do it, which sounded intriguing.
And
So
the 18
it-
months sooner actually helps us, there's a financial impact to that as well, right? As far as the borrow.
Yeah.
Price
Bonnie
goes
was
up and so
explaining
on,
about
price
the-
goes up.
We'll be doing, 18 months from now, the town will be doing plenty of borrowing on
Yeah,
things,
so
library.
18 months from now, we'll be poor, so we'll be able to get a grant for it.
Yeah, sewer and
And we're not gonna wanna do it, right? We're not gonna ask
One
for
of the
it.
interesting factors that also came out to us yesterday was one of the manufacturers stated that the tariffs have affected their costs, and that they would, within the next year, the cost of their apparatus would be raising 25%. That's not the manufacturer that we're looking at, it's just one of the engine manufacturers have made their people aware of that. I don't have any factual information on that number. It seems high, but they are all anticipating different, manipulation through these tariffs.
Some of the people are gonna be using those tariffs to
They
jack up
are.
prices anyway, we know
And
that.
they're gonna take advantage of it.
But,
Right.
here's a question I have as I look at all this thing. If that grant request had come back and said, great, you get a grant, we'll give you 200,000, that's how much we got left, okay? And we were still at $1 million, right? We'd be in the same place as getting the demo and saving the 200,000 moving forward.
That's
Financially, there's really, and that's a very big a possibility that we wouldn't have gotten the whole million anyway, right?
And
So-
you get what they give you.
I'm just, I'm struggling with this, making all this decision based on the grant, as opposed to, do we need the truck? And what's the financial right way to get it and go for it? I'm just not hearing things on the other side that make it, well, that makes sense to me. I'm just not there yet.
Bottom line on the truck itself, the condition of it right now, we know it needs engine work. The mechanic has recommended that we don't get into that. He feels that it's going to, evolve into something more significant. We know we have issues with hydraulics and brakes. Those have been going on, for several years now. And we continue to Band-Aid them. We're going to run this truck as long as we can. There's no two ways about that. It's a vehicle that we need.
But something could happen that would take it out of service, it just could not be fixed or not within any reasonable amount of money.
That's
It's
correct.
possible at this
The
point.
trade on this vehicle, if we were to get the grant, you have to explain in detail how you're going to dispose of it. It's scrap. The one manufacturer of the vehicle that we're looking at, they would give us roughly $10,000 to $12,000 in trade.
Let's scrap down.
It's scrap.
I think you mentioned something at a previous meeting that should something happen to the ladder truck and it's inoperable, that it affects our insurance rate?
Honestly, it would take 1 to 2 years for that to actually catch up to, yes, if we did not replace it, there would be an impact.
Okay.
But it would take a year or two for the ISO to actually catch up to that if we didn't replace it before it would start to affect the taxpayer.
But then we're in a position where, we have to buy whatever is on the market, right?
And then wait 18 months,
Yeah.
unless we give another doubt.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? Director?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would just like to know, Selectmen didn't support the motion. Why?
If we have a selectman here.
I can't speak for the other 2 members that didn't support it. I support this going before town meeting and having the folks that are at town meeting decide. It's costed, for the past 3 years, we've spent about $5,000 this year. This is just estimates from last night from Bonnie. About $5,000 this year to date. About $17,000 in 2017, about $13,000 in 2016 to keep this roadworthy. I guess that's the best way to say it, because you're not fixing everything that needs to be fixed, you're just keeping it on the road.
It's keeping it in service.
Keeping it in service. Every year there's an opportunity to go for the grant. I am of the opinion that we could put another $200,000 aside this year, reapply for the grant, and we're putting more skin in the game when we do the application, because now we're saying we have $400,000. There's a need for at least 1 ambulance, if not 2. We've got the Scott packs, $200,000.
Squad packs and the ambulance will be coming up in the first Springtown meeting, yes.
Right. So there's other stuff on the horizon, so I just see this as, if the residents at town meeting say, let's just do it now, then we could do it now. The other issue that hasn't come up is whether or not we need a tower truck. There's arguments, absolute valid arguments for tower trucks, but in the research I've done, there's also arguments against tower trucks. There's regular stick like we have now versus the platform tower. So I think that right now, with the other capital investments that we have to do for the fire department, and speaking with a number of residents around town, there's the perception that we just spent $9 million on a fire department, on the fire station, engine 2, the newest engine. So there's other things that have been 2 or 3?
3 years ago, yeah.
So it's kind of like, when do we get a break, basically? So if town meeting supports it, by all means, that's why we have the process that we have. But I didn't vote to recommend it, just because I think that we can wait another year.
Thank you.
Personally.
Chief, the air packs is a safety issue, and we really have to do that.
They expire. Those
They
expire
expire.
next year,
They have to be.
and they have to be replaced. We cannot send those out to be hydro-tested any longer. They've met their maximum life, and they are for
So
replacement.
that's really not a choice, we really need to.
We did
find-
apply for the
find-
AFG grant for them a
right.
year ago, and we were denied for that.
Okay. The ambulance, if you had your choice,
So,
you can only have one.
a little bit of background on the ambulance. We changed models of the ambulances when I first arrived as chief. Actually, one came the year prior to myself, and one the year that I came in. And we changed the model of them. We went from the van style to the truck style to actually buy some time. It was a heavy-duty truck, and we were able to buy some time. We were on a 4 to 5 year replacement for those. Basically every 5 years, one was being replaced. With this, we've gone to 6 and 7 years now. If one's ordered in the spring, it's roughly a year before we get it. So we've been able to extend the life cycle with that, and we're starting to notice the wear on the vehicles. So yes, we've made the life a little bit longer, but we need to get back onto a rotation of them. Those vehicles are utilized on a daily basis.
Okay, so play Solomon, which one? I'm only gonna, if you can only have one this year, what is it?
We need the latter. It's 30 years old, and it's ticking. It's a matter of time. I have 2 ambulances. If I have to make it stretch, I'll make it stretch. If one goes out of service, then we use mutual aid.
How often do you use the ladder truck?
Daily. No,
For the
Once a- once a day.
ladder, or for the
it
ladder?
responds as an engine, and a ladder responds as a company to every fire alarm investigation. We always go assuming that it is what it is. We don't,
So how often does the ladder go up?
maybe a dozen times a year. Could be go up at fires, it goes up, mutual aid when it goes to fires. Maybe 2 dozen times a year. Investigations on commercial buildings, on rooftops, things like that.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the chief, what are we talking for an ambulance?
350,000.
The ambulance is 350.
I'm not trying to,
Yeah, no, I just,
Scott, I
No,
know
that's
you need
fine.
it, I definitely know you need
Right,
it.
it's in the capital. They will continue to snowball, they don't disappear.
I know.
And they stay on there, and we've adjusted that cycle to gain the maximum usability out of them, so that, we stretch the life on them, and we try to use them and not, rotate them out just because we can. They get used, and the vehicles get
how much
tired.
does it cost us to hire a grant writer? The last one we were successful on was written by a grant writer, right?
And that, as a matter of fact, it was written by the same individual that wrote our grant for the air packs 2 years ago. And that was done in 2006 for the SAFER grant, when we had a different financial model.
So how much do they
So
charge?
how much is it charge, what do they charge to write a grant?
At the time, the individual that did it, he was a Concord firefighter. I think it cost about 2 cases of beer.
I'll pay for the beer.
At the VFW.
As long as it's parked.
There you go.
So honestly, I don't know. I don't know what it would cost for a grant writer.
No, I'm just thinking
Yep.
if.
But so,
If there's.
if we put this out for a grant,
We should,
they stop awarding, roughly. I mean, it was just last week, the grant was closed. So that would put us out next year to the following spring. You're looking at 4 years for a replacement of a ladder truck. I don't see that making it to 35 years old.
hell, that's less than half of my age. You were to put me up to that.
It's young,
too. Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns?
I have mixed feelings on this, but I agree with Chuck. Let it go to town meeting and let the people decide.
Okay. Then do I have a motion to support or a motion not to support, or what's the choice of the committee?
Move, do we support the article?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion to support Article 8C as written. Any other questions? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Okay, we'll support it.
Thank you.
We'll see what happens.
And if the voters don't think it's necessary, then it won't be voted.
We had a few phone calls from seniors today that said if it's going to be funded,
Well,
to them, it was a no-brainer.
The other thing I would just add, in terms of the off-cycle, I definitely don't like off-cycle things in general, but this isn't a surprise off-cycle thing. If something comes in that's never been on and never been evaluated against other things, that's different, but this has been on the radar for years, so that doesn't bother me like something new coming out of the
And we've
blue.
all been a party to pushing it out.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Saying, you know, trust us, trust us, trust us, and.
Well, at some point, it's
Understood.
gonna-
I mean, there was definitely,
Some things
it was
gonna-
foolish to try to push for this a couple of years ago. It didn't make sense.
Okay.
Okay,
Maybe that marijuana money.
Up in smoke.
Depends on how much you buy.
How high can the ladder go? right?
oh.
It's going down real fast. Okay, Bonnie.
Moving right along.
But Santa's gotta get to the common for the tree lighting, that's all I know.
But those funds, if used for any of these three items, are not able to be used for something else, whatever that
That's
something
all,
else.
that's true of everything we do,
Right,
absolutely.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
right now, there is a plan to do it, so, yeah.
Don't we have to vote motion two?
Yeah, and in general, I
Because that was
line
motion
right
one.
up with the off-cycle discussion, and we have in the past
We
when
voted.
surprises.
Wait a
involved.
minute.
No, no.
Surprise,
By
surprise,
fire
surprise.
station, you've got
Item C.
you've got 8C,
We don't
motion one and motion two.
The schools will see that number.
On the top of the next page, page 15.
Well, this is A, B, and C. We
No,
just-
top of page 15.
Right.
8C.
That's motion two. On
Which
the
is
top
for
of page-
8C.
8C is what we just.
Don't we need to
voted.
vote on that
They
too?
just did.
No, you just did. Voted
just
for-
did.
8C.
for-
Oh, we
just
voted
Yeah,
for
because A
both?
and B are in
did.
motion one,
Yeah.
C is in motion two.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
Article 9 is a non-financial article, so it's to amend the town bylaws to allow alcohol on town-owned property. It's always subject to the governing board, so it's not just free-for-all.
To stimulate.
Two to one ratio.
Only alcohol,
Two joints every day.
we're the
Look to
selectmen.
Littleton.
Okay.
And there are parameters.
It's gonna replace Johnny Appleseed.
It requires the custodial board in charge of the property to grant permission in the first instance, and secondly, the board of
Sorry,
selectmen
I
issue when they
got,
get the license. Because right now, there's an absolute prohibition on alcohol on all town property, town-owned property.
There are a lot of restrictions,
So
essentially, what you're saying.
the kids after the football game will have to get a permit to drink on the field.
No drinking in the field.
Can they smoke pot on the?
not on the field, not on the field.
They know it's good.
Only clear liquids, only clear liquids.
Okay.
Water.
I've been there, done that.
Know what's in your water bottle.
All right.
So Article
Again,
10 is
past my
the,
bedtime.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Back at the,
So Article 10 is for the Littleton Commons Smart Sewer Design. It's a borrowing article, so it requires a 2/3 vote. And it's to authorize the issuance of $2.2 million in bonds or bands for the design of the common sewer district.
Now, the town has a plethora of officials going to Boston on October 4th.
October 4th, yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning because there's, I think, from the Finance Committee standpoint, there's important information about that we don't yet have and won't be able to inform you about after that meeting, but we, and the advice of Secretary of Economic Development, Jay Ash, who met with our selectmen here a couple of months ago, and to whom we have since applied for a $3 million MassWorks grant for the sewer. We had also advised him at the time that Senator Eldridge had obtained an earmark in the environmental bond bill for $6 million for the Littleton sewer. And Secretary Ash, being mindful that environmental bond issue is under, that earmark is under the purview a different cabinet secretary, Environmental Affairs Secretary Nat Beaton. Jay Ash's suggestion was that Littleton's team get together with Jay's team and Matt's team in Boston to talk about what we might be able to realistically expect from those two state agencies.
What
And when.
When?
Yeah, what and when. So there's $9 million on the table that we have essentially requested, but it's within the purview of those two cabinet secretaries to give us something or nothing.
Right.
And we want to know what that is, especially, and we want to have that information by the time we're going to the voters and asking for support so that they know. We are not proposing design and construction as we had originally thought back when we pulled the design article in May town meeting. The judgment has been made to, in part because there's been great interest on the part of many property owners, a lot of businesses, a lot of property owners that had not spoken up before have been indicating, especially the businesses, that they were supportive of the sewer. So we didn't want to, so we made the judgment to go after design funding for all phases, and not just phase one. The $1.5 million that we had, that we're talking about for design funds in May, we're now looking at $2.2 million for design in October, and the reason is because we want to design all the phases, so that we're not leaving. What we don't want to do is send a signal to a property owner who might be in a phase two area, and, well, what about me? Well, we would like to be able to include them in our planning. I mentioned before the meeting started that that the two of the largest properties in Littleton Common, one is out of play, one is perhaps in play, perhaps. IBM's landlord has indicated that they are not looking for a sewer hookup. We've had continuing conversations with them there, and we have dialogue, but they're not interested at the current time. It's the responsibility of the landlord to provide the sewer capital expense if there is one, and they have no plans for expanding that the facility at that location. So we had once thought that perhaps
Do we know how long the IBM lease is?
it's a 20-year lease that started in 2008, so there's another 10 years.
Okay, so another 10 years on their lease, okay.
So, and it's a little side agreement, but the IBM's landlord, while they did not express interest in hooking up the sewer, they did express the interest in and have signed a license agreement allowing the town to implement park and ride spaces in the IBM lot. So we'll be proceeding with those soon. Sam Parks The Point had initially said thanks but no thanks, but we heard back from Sam. Sam approached the town within the last month. He has some issues that I won't get into that he's got with DEP. His facility, he's supposed to have 2 phases there. Of his on-site facility, he's only built 1 phase, and before he does his phase 2, he wants to be able to explore with the town. Is there a solution to his needs that can somehow be met by being a part of the town's strategy? So we're happy to explore those.
So is that
but
like-
there's no commitment that he's going to hook up. We just the most we can say is that we want to fully explore whether there's a way to include the Point property in our sewer plan or not.
But if you're going to include the Point property,
Mhm.
it's another crossing of 495.
Well,
Would that would that say that that phase, you would
Yeah.
try to rejuvenate that whole phase, or just the point?
No, we're on the other side, no, we would be on the west side of 495. We would be looking at, maybe we've had interest on Russell Street for the new credit union property, that there's other interests.
Number of residents.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
so
another-
it potentially wouldn't just be the.
Yeah,
park.
we had looked at one point of withdrawing to
Okay.
just this side of 495, and we're looking across to the other side, and include that in the design phase. So what we don't know yet is how much money would the state be able to put on the table and when. The argument that we're making is twofold. One is for economic development. The other is for the environmental
And that's the-
innovative approach of
That's the
the
core
park.
piece, right?
So, we're going to pitch all that we can to try to get some state funding, but it's critical to know what that is before we do construction.
No,
That because, you don't let, you want to make, and we told the town that we'll make a business, a sound business decision, and you got to know what's the state contribution to it. You don't go ahead and just construct all on the town without knowing for sure what the state contribution is, and so it's very important.
So will
to
you
explore.
be able to get some kind of an assurance from the secretaries on the, is it the 23rd?
It will be October 4th when the meeting is, and as you say that, I'm thinking, well, let's
Municipal.
see, then there's an election on November 6th, and I hope that those secretaries are there.
Yes.
Leave a
So-
memo to the file,
So you, all right, so we kind of need to know that number before you even ask for the 2.2 million, is that what we're saying?
Well,
We need to know something's coming?
based on my experience with the finance committee, is you would want to know,
Yeah, absolutely.
you would want to know that number before you make your recommendation. Happy to have your favorable recommendation tonight. Would certainly ask that you hold off anything other than that until we get you more information. If you're not prepared. Selectmen were prepared to recommend, we've got a number of boards that are, that will go on record as recommending, but I
But
know it's a higher
The
bar.
most recent spreadsheets came out on the 9th of September, and there's $5.7 million worth of quote grants in the spreadsheet. In that 5.7 is 482,000 that the town has already coughed in. They call that grant money. So there's basically $5.2 million worth of grants in the financial spreadsheet that they put out, which then rolls down to how much each property owner would pay and what the fees would be.
Yeah.
And if you take what the town's share will be, we've got almost 500,000 into it already. It's 2.2 for design. It's 2.7. Depending on which of the two spreadsheets you use, there's either a betterment fee of 2.3 million or 1.8 million. And two spreadsheets.
For the town, for the town.
This is the town.
Yeah.
That's for us to
Because-
hook in,
because
for us to
we're-
hook in.
Because
right.
we're a user.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's based on the town basically being 24% of the flow that
Yeah.
was calculated. That also states that the town will spend approximately $129,700 a year for sewage versus the 108 we're paying now. So to me, building a sewer to support growth of the common makes all the sense in the world. personally, I'm still not convinced that it makes sense for the town to have to put that much money into it when we already have a system that's working.
That was
It's
gonna be my
old.
question.
It's
How-
old.
How long does our current system
And
last
if
us?
maybe you put another $1 million into it in the next 5 years, you're $1 million ahead.
Similarly to the ladder truck, the system up at the high school is long in the tooth. We could get another 20 years on that. I can't make that determination. But somewhere along the line, that replacement or enhancement or repairs have to be factored into that.
You know, no, absolutely, but nobody's, you know,
Quantify
that's
that.
just been assumed away. Mainly because this does not financially work if the town does not front the betterments payment. So that says the town has to come up with either 1.8 upfront or 2.3 upfront for the first 2 or 3 years to financially work. So we can't pay the over 20 years the way other people will be paying. So, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff rolling around here, and I think the selectmen need to understand that as we go forward.
I have a question. Pine Tree Park has, I think, 4 septic systems,
Yep.
and would they, has anyone talked to them about tying in?
Yeah, we have had those discussions, and I should get an update from Weston and Sampson about it, but where we had already the approval of the Housing Authority to do an engineering study of what it would cost and what the feasibility is of hooking the Shattuck Street property up to our existing system at the high school.
Right.
And then to see, and so we're exploring that right now. And if we can, because there are grant opportunities that we could pursue with the Housing Authority to help, help them hook up to the system. But we are exploring that, and I don't have an update or answer, but we tasked Weston and Sampson with that a couple of months ago.
Okay. Because Rich Crowley and I stopped by just kind of one day and talked to the administrator there and said, what do you use for, we didn't know anything about the system, but we understand that there are 4 septic systems are near the end of their life.
So, that's why we suggested potentially getting that, because they were actually looking at replacing one of them. And we said, well, if we can hook them into the high school and have enough capacity to do that,
Yeah.
we've got them. Even if you hook the high school up to the big system, we've already got that in there. We're
Yeah.
generating revenue.
It's all downhill from Pine Tree.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah, it is.
Gravity feed, right?
Now,
Yeah.
whether the pipe sizes and
Flush
pumps
voice.
and all that are appropriate, I don't know. But it was at least a thought, so
Yeah.
I think it's worth, I think it's a good point.
So, here's a question. So, assuming they have these meetings at the State House, and they come back and said, instead of the 5 million we're expecting, the number's 2 million. Somebody quickly can make a decision whether this goes or stays, or does it have to be 5 million for us to go, or is 3 okay, or is there a threshold where we have to get it, otherwise this isn't gonna go to town meeting?
Well, I think that it's certainly whether we go to, I don't know, I'm not sure what the answer is. I mean, it will be, part of it will be,
Sorry, that's a hard
when.
question.
I mean, how much and when? How much is it and when is it? If it's only $2 million and it's not for a couple of years, then, I don't know. I mean, then there's probably no need to design it in the short term. Because we won't be doing it, and then we make a judgment about whether you want to do it in the long term. If it's a healthier number and it's closer to, to the 5, 6, or more, then it's, full speed ahead. What's important about this town meeting vote, though, is this this is how the town, and I feel very strongly about, why this is on the warrant. For the timing that we're asking for state money, that we have to, the town has to, we're trying to get significant money from the state, we have to put some skin in the game. So that apart from, we've never had a 2/3 vote on the sewer. And we need to, if we're gonna pursue it at all, we need to show the state that we are putting money on the table. And that I think that will help us make the most convincing statement that we can do that.
Who's going to present at town meeting for this article?
Who's gonna present at town meeting?
Probably Chase.
Chase.
Chase, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. This is his baby.
Yeah.
So do these committee, you said something earlier, Keith, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
About, well, what if these secretaries change? So if we get a commitment, I mean, is it a real commitment, or is it a political commitment that, yeah, it's there, but, it could change?
And until it.
Until you get it,
Until you get it, you really don't know anyway, right?
Check clears.
Okay,
Not the big one.
okay, yeah. But the other side of that is, we could vote this, but it doesn't mean we have to spend it right away, right? You vote it, and then if things are not
You'd have to spend it.
financially,
Well,
it's still.
Yeah, that's not a, putting all those pieces together, it's not the worst thing to say, all right, on October 29th,
Right?
we can have an authorizing vote. There's no need to sign a contract until after November 6th, which is election day. So, if, with the people who made, I'm just saying, the way it goes, that our comfort, if the current secretaries are in place now, gave us a number, and that they're, and a commitment, and that they're still in office after the election, or then that we can go to town.
It's the best shot that you get, whether they stand up to it or not is later, up for debate later, but.
So when you go to meet with them, are you going to go in and say, these are all the committees in town that support this? I mean, are you going to take something, in other words, if we vote tonight, will that have any impact at all?
I don't think that it will, but I don't think that if you vote against it, that would not be helpful. If you reserve judgment to see how well the meeting goes, you're the prudential committee, I mean, as it's known in some places, right? But we certainly want to bring them, selectmen, water commissioners, board of health, planning board, master plan committee, economic development committee, the usual, and we want to earn your support by bringing home a good number.
The objective of the meeting is to prove to them that it's a good project, and to show them what the benefits are for each of their respective responsibilities. And frankly, for them to get behind it, to be able to say, show it off to the rest of the country, really, because this would be a novel system. And they would be able to get into politics, they'd be able to say, this is our baby. So we really need to sell them on it.
Well, I personally think that you've got a heck of a selling job to the town, because a lot of people in town don't have a clue as to what's going on there. Whether that's right or wrong, or they've got their head in the sand, but there's a lot of people that they don't know about it, and they're wondering, So I know that, the flyer is gonna go out in the mail and that kind of stuff, but I think there's a big sales job to be done if the selectmen really want this to go between now and the 29th, or be prepared for have some hairy questions. And I think Darrell Baker, I thought, asked some basically the same questions I've been asking for the last 3 months. We just get another spreadsheet that says the same thing. I think,
to Fred's point, I feel that I'm marginally informed on this, but I still don't know as much as I should,
Yeah. So, getting all excited about this meeting in Boston and listening to you say, oh, yeah, we're gonna sell them on this, and tell them this. Bob Zimmerman's finally gonna have his dream come true. The town is really the one you gotta sell. And, you know, you can stack the town meeting, but I think a lot of people are gonna come with some real questions. So we need to.
Hopefully, a lot of those questions will be answered prior to the meeting. I hope that people.
Absolutely,
are
that's all I'm
investing in
saying
time.
is you've got to, basically, 5 weeks or something, to get out there and do your homework.
There's
Are
going
we
to
the
be a
first
long
town?
time town meeting.
Would we be the first town to do this?
So there's communities all over the country that have done components.
Yeah.
There's never been anybody who's put all the components together like with the court system that we've proposed.
And ideally, if we could convince them that use this for a pilot plant.
Right.
For Lawrence or Laurel or Boston, why are we only getting $5 million? Why aren't they paying for the damn thing?
How about federal money?
It's just that much.
Yeah, I mean,
To Chief's point, every department in the country is going after that same truck that he's going after. So when we go into those buckets, there's a lot more hands reaching into those buckets, so. It's 351
I would just
communities.
remind him who was the state.
but this is a novel
Trump
situation.
State Headquarters, it's right here a little.
That's right.
And part of making this work is
Yep, talk about the group.
about $300,000 worth of income drawn from this manufacturing. Selling electricity, selling water, and potentially nitrates
The waste, yeah.
for fertilizers or something. But there's a business plan that needs to be put together. This is not just flushing your toilet and having your septic system work. This thing it's a manufacturing plant. So, the level of individuals that have to run it, the number of hours that somebody has to be there during the day is different than a normal sewage plant.
Right.
So there's a whole staff that's gonna have to be put together. 70 wet tons of food waste a week are coming into this thing. Somebody has to
Hadn't
do
didn't yet, all
contracts.
set.
Yeah, that's a lot of french fries. And I'm sure that the stuff is generated and it's hauled from place to place, but somebody's gonna have to manage that. So it's gonna be an entity called the sewer, whatever it is.
Littleton Commerce Sewer Authority.
Yeah, what, something.
That was my question. Assuming that this works the way everybody wants it to work, we construct it, who's going to manage it?
Paul Glady.
That was my thought.
Well, we've engaged,
He's full of-
Light and Water is part of the sewer team, and we're exploring, as we will be exploring as an option, having it done in-house. There are other options of contracting out. I had a Provincetown, I had the design, build, operate sewer, and we had an outside company that ran the system for us, so I didn't have to keep searching for sewer superintendents.
That's what we're doing with the high school system. We've got an engineering firm that, and then the local guy looks in every day.
It's contract.
Yeah, so, but, this is different. This is a different animal. You're collecting the gas, you're burning it off you're generating heat. We're gonna heat one of the buildings down there with the heat generated off this thing in the winter.
Where's it going to be located?
I'm sorry?
Where's the?
Proposed behind the highway department.
Okay.
Here's
So, I mean, this, this could be a really elegant solution, but it's out there compared to what anybody else has done.
Mhm.
Yeah. And, you know, that's not to say we shouldn't do it, but we ought to go into it with our eyes open, saying, yep, we need a business plan, who's gonna run it, what level of people we have to run it, and does the P&L that Weston and Sampson keeps regurgitating make sense? And Bonnie, have you and Steve looked at those numbers?
I haven't received a spreadsheet that I can actually enlarge enough that I can look at, so no.
So, I mean, you know, we're,
The spreadsheets that you're looking at,
yep,
where the bottom line is that it has to generate this much revenue to be sustainable. Does
Right,
does
yeah.
that include maintenance and people to run it?
supposedly, but I can't get to that level of detail on what they have there. And the most recent spreadsheet is about 1.8 million in the red in year 20. So, you know, they build up the reserves at the beginning and it burns down towards, you know, way out there, so.
And I do want to make sure that the debt service calculations are correct on the design versus the construction, because there's different borrowing terms that you can do for design versus construction.
Right,
so.
I mean, I really think for this size project, she and Steve ought to be privy to whatever the heck the numbers are in a meaningful way. I mean,
And the cost is what, 26 million?
27 at this point.
But then if the point comes in, that cost is gonna go up, I would think,
Could,
right? Because
Yeah.
wasn't that absent?
yeah, the total project was 38 or 39.
Right.
So that doesn't say that they won't be back for more if the point does it.
And then the state could kick in 9 million,
That's the earmark.
6 and 2, or somewhere around.
That's
Well, I
VC
mean,
now.
that's-
September was nine.
that's what-
Well,
That's politics,
Nine and a
man.
half, 2.5, I don't know.
Yeah, 6 and 3.
Your math is-
6 and 3.
6 and 3,
Yeah,
and we are exploring, you know, the.
I wrote it down.
He- he's just telling you
And
the
we're
Gotcha.
truth.
exploring the federal EDA, that there are other, you know, there are other funding mechanisms. We've submitted a state revolving fund application for which we qualify for a lower interest rate because we're a housing choice community, so.
I think there's an opening on the cultural committee we identified last night. 6 and 2 equals 9. Fincom, might want to go to cultural club. I've heard you say.
Well, it's late, it's past my bedtime.
I mean, to your other point about Bonnie and Steve, if they have time to actually, or whether if they have time or not, this is a big thing for the town, to actually kept those spreadsheets to be able to do some of their own analysis. I mean, can we make that happen? Is there a reason why it hasn't
What do
happened?
these do? I
What
have
hasn't
no
happened, Bonnie?
explanation.
Yeah, we've
I
asked
have no
several times for an actual spreadsheet, and I asked if it could be, even if it's a dead spreadsheet, like not linked to anything, just the data so that I can enlarge it. So what we're getting are PDF documents that I can't, when I try and enlarge them, I can't read the numbers. And Steve's having the same problem. So it's a PDF, and we've asked for spreadsheets,
Here you
but.
go.
PDFs.
And I understand they don't want us,
I thought
like,
it out.
changing their spreadsheets, I totally
Yeah.
understand
You're
that.
gonna have to plot it out on a
Yeah, that one.
36
Yeah,
24.
just send me that email now. And we've got
That's what you get, is PDF, you can't
You
do it.
can't do anything with it.
I mean, literally, I went with a magnifying glass to read the numbers that I
Stephen,
wanted.
But you shouldn't even have to do that. You should be in Excel that you don't have to
Right,
read the
and,
numbers.
I mean,
Okay, all right. You've got a commitment, it's gonna happen, so.
I've been asking for that
Ask.
since I've been on the committee. And, I mean, this,
Did you ask nicely?
Somebody took the,
Who is this asking? Is this asking the consultants? Who we ask?
I asked the
Yeah,
consultants
Weston
directly.
I mean,
Okay, all right, just.
they hadn't figured out that they
Yeah,
worked for
but-
us.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's,
But we have bi-weekly team meetings. when we cover all unanswered questions, and this one has not come up.
I've raised it directly with the consultants a couple of times. And so has Steve.
Yeah. I guess what I'll say is,
Go to Keith or go to
what I'm,
Paul
yeah,
and Chase,
what I'm
they're the
saying
champions.
is, that we
They work
have-
for us.
We have everybody there except finance on our bi-weekly meetings, and that's where we do the problem solving, so I would encourage you to.
It's, and again, I'm
And
not.
it's not like
So
the
maybe you guys
question
should be
has
able
to
to
be-
meet
I would love to be at every meeting that I need to be
Yeah.
at, but I'm in the middle of, I had 3 training sessions on different applications today that I need to implement, so I'm doing, we're doing our best to be at all the meetings, but
But the information.
I'm just
is
saying
not
that we've
available.
we've set up a way that we make sure that we follow up, and we've got that system in place, we just need to take advantage of it.
yep.
Can I make a suggestion that we do something with this article?
Yeah, I was thinking.
Well,
I think that the answer is
I
to,
would recommend, and defer to the committee on it, but I would recommend that we hold on this and we revisit it on the meeting of the 23rd with the express purpose of hearing back what the impact of the grants in the meetings on October 4th are. And if that's squishy, then we can put that into our thought process. If it's solid, then we can put that into our thought process.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Totally.
Fair enough? I'll look for a motion to,
Motion to hold the question until our meeting of the 24th.
Second.
okay. Any other conversation? No? Okay, all in favor of holding on this article, which article is it? Article 10, until our joint meeting with the selectmen on the 23rd of October, with the express purpose to hear back on the funding from the state before we make a recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No? Okay. So we have a hold on that. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Planning board amend accessory apartments.
That's a zoning amendment.
Zoning amendment. That's it, right?
Yep, and Article 12 is also a zoning amendment.
Okay.
We've run out of articles.
You okay taking that message back to the selectmen that we're going to be looking for feedback on the 23rd? And I'd like to hear, what confidence level on how much money and when.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we have, what do we got left? Our public left. So we have no public input. Minutes, we have minutes.
What else other had to be public?
You don't count.
Apparently.
All right, do we have any public here that would like to speak? Okay. And we have minutes from, let's see,
Yep.
I'm still on probably.
Oh, there you
Let's
go.
see, minutes from our September 11th meeting, present were Greg, Fred, Betsy, Gary, Alan, and Steve. Tom was absent, Greg and Gary aren't here, but we still have a quorum with the other 5, so. Any comments? They went out quite a while ago, I made a couple comments that you changed.
You changed mine to Maryland, right? Because I
Yeah.
sent some to you also.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a motion to accept the minutes of September 11th, the Littleton Finance Committee minutes
So moved.
as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second, have a motion second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous. Thank you. And apparently, Marilyn, if you can do this for me, Our town clerk told me today that we need to put minutes together for last night, and because we did not have a quorum, all it needs to say is no quorum present. Therefore, Finance Committee did not open the meeting.
Because we're posted, we have to do that at least, huh?
Yeah, so just bring that next time and we'll,
Okay.
Betsy and I are the only two are there, so we'll approve it. So, okay?
Yep.
Alan doesn't get credit because you didn't stay to the.
Oh, that's right. No partial credit,
Because
right?
he-
No partial credit. All right, around the table, I'll start. You basically heard where we are on the sewer project. Anything else, Steve?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah, I went to the first transportation meeting, and it was just a get started meeting, figure out who everybody is and what we're trying to do, and it's not going to be more of a advisory and thought process kind of thing, and meet quarterly, I think is kind of the thought on it right now. It was a good group. I was impressed. It was nice, so that was good. And Michelle, CPC was going to meet this week, but it got delayed. So that's what happened.
Yeah.
Space needs, we had 3 replies back for an owner's representative, OPM. We're meeting tomorrow night, and we're going to talk about interviewing, and when we get some information back from there, I'll have more for us on our next meeting day. But that's where we are right now.
Okay. Bonnie, anything else before we close it?
Nope.
Okay. Great. And for my favorite time of the evening? entertain a
So
motion.
moved.
Don't have anybody to second. Anybody want a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.